Hello everybody. So this week I'm going to talk about fatigue and energy inconsistencies. This is something that I see a lot in practice and that we all probably deal with eventually at some point in our lives. So I thought I would talk about the most common root causes that I see contributing to fatigue or energy inconsistencies, and just a little bit on how to know if this could be contributing to your own issues. So the first thing is actually going to be blood sugar regulation or blood sugar dysregulation. In our modern world, we are very carb heavy, a lot of processed foods, a lot of sugars, and I know a lot of us are very mindful of it, but it still seems to get into our diets. And if you're like me, I'm guilty of not having a consistent schedule of eating, and so I sometimes will grab things on the go, or I'll eat inconsistently. And what we want throughout the day is an even and consistent blood sugar level. But what ends up happening if you start eating like I do, or if you start eating foods high in sugar or refined sugars that are absorbed quickly into the bloodstream, your blood sugars start going really wonky. When that happens, your body and your nervous system get really confused. They don't know what's happening. Your adrenals, your cortisol, your hormones start going all out of whack. And then you get really, really anxious, really tired, really fatigued. You get that kind of wired but tired feel. The best way to keep your blood sugar stable throughout the day is to, as you probably would guess, go down to what you're eating, but also when you're eating it. So eating foods that are higher in fats and proteins, so think more nuts and seeds and avocados and fish, and things that are slower to absorb, and staying away from grains, and definitely refined carbs and added sugars. Just get rid of that stuff completely. And then also eating at regular intervals throughout the day. So you can look into intermittent fasting if you find that this is something that might work for you. Intermittent fasting, there's a few ways of doing it, but essentially the idea is to fast for a period of time. So traditionally, I guess biologically, this is done just naturally overnight when we're sleeping. But some people, you can choose to extend that to a period of 16 or so hours a day, I would say. So look into that if that's something that might work. That has been researched and proven to help with blood sugar control. And also just being mindful again of eating in regular intervals. So this helps your body approach the foods you're eating it in small doses instead of being given like an onslaught of sugar or nutrients all at once. So this can help it sort of just adapt and keep things regular and even. Tip number 2 is not breathing properly. So a lot of us are shallow chest breathers. We breathe into our chest, and naturally we're actually supposed to be breathing into our bellies. When we're breathing into our bellies, this activates the parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest system, which when we're breathing shallowly into our chest, it's actually activating the sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight or flight system. A lot of us weren't taught how to breathe properly, and a lot of us are stressed and sort of just operating on that fight or flight on the day-to-day. So this causes us to breathe into our chest very shallowly, and when we do this, it acts as a positive feedback loop, sending signals back to our nervous system that we're stressed out. When this happens, it kind of goes into the point I'm going to talk about next, but your body perceives that it's stressed, and so this is going to cause your adrenals to go out of whack, your hormones to go out of whack, your nervous system to be dysregulated, leading to, again, fatigue, issues with energy, that wired but tired feeling, and a lot of things can. Number 3, nervous system dysregulation. So like I was just saying, with the way our breath works, when our parasympathetic nervous system is active, that's that rest and digest pathway. That's what we want to be activated. But in our modern day, a lot of us are in the opposite, that sympathetic fight or flight system. And that just comes because we live in a world where our bodies can't and our minds can't really discern the difference between that real threat, that tiger, that lion that's going to eat us, versus that one that's perceived, that's a little bit more esoteric or heady, that wasn't around when our nervous systems developed, such as that deadline at work or that credit card bill. These are things that are perceived as a very real danger, but our bodies don't get that mismatch, and so they prepare physically to attack. And so when this happens again over time, things get really dysregulated, and we end up in a state where we're really tired, fatigued, can't keep up with the day, because we're now iron and nutrient deficiency. So iron deficiency anemia is a very common thing I see, mostly in females, menstruating females, but definitely not exclusively. And there's a huge range when it comes to testing for iron, and so if you're on this lower range, it might be still considered normal, but you might not feel normal. And so I always look at labs a little bit differently correlated to your symptoms and how you feel. But definitely testing regularly for iron levels, especially if you're a woman, is really important. Other ones, nutrients to check are vitamin B12 and vitamin D, as well as just like a CBC with DIP that's called an immune, just kind of an immune general screening panel. These are also shown to correlate with fatigue and energy levels when these levels are low, so it's important to get these checked out. Another lab or another thing that is commonly dysregulated that is not often checked, and if it is, the lab correlations don't always make sense, is thyroid. So again, very common in females more, and it has to do with your thyroid gland, which is your master metabolic controller, usually not functioning at its best. So when this happens, essentially our metabolism isn't running as fast as it could be, and so we're tired. Other symptoms you might notice if you are dealing with a underactive thyroid might be weight gain, constipation, dry skin, hair loss, things like that. Environmental triggers and toxicity. So if you're allergic to pollen and it's pollen season, your immune system is going to be really active, and when this happens, it just naturally creates fatigue because it's a tiring process. There's a lot going on, the body is always working, and you're naturally going to get tired. Same goes to say if you are in a really toxic environment, then you will probably notice that your immune system is active. You have other symptoms that are quite unpleasant. One of them being fatigue, brain fog, skin rashes, joint pains, all of that kind of stuff can show up with environmental toxicities, mold, pollen, allergies, all of that kind of stuff. So do take note of your environment. And then last but not least, and probably the most obvious, is just hydration, sleep, and stagnation. So all of these things will kind of play into all of it, environmental toxicity, thyroid, nervous system dysregulation, not breathing properly, blood sugars, all of this is going to be affected, and in turn affect stagnation and dehydration levels and just sleep and wellness and rest in general. So those are foundational pieces that always need to be checked if energy levels are out of balance, because without those, really nothing is going to improve long term permanently. Okay, so those are the most common root cause things that I see in practice for causing fatigue issues. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, or if you're interested in learning more about how I approach these from a root cause, individual, holistic level, then please just send me a message. I would love to work with you. Have a beautiful week, and I will see you soon.